e-commerce platforms. So let's say historically, Wow or Takas were retail-based e-commerce platforms. So what that means is they actually own the inventory and they are the seller, whereas DRAS is predominantly a marketplace, similar to Amazon, where we just allow third-party sellers to sell using our technology and our logistics infrastructure. So we connect the seller and the buyer. So in Sri Lanka, as an e-commerce marketplace, we probably are one of the larger players. You do have competitors like Caprica and Ikman, who are also entering that space. But in terms of usage, the most widely used platforms in Sri Lanka are still the international platforms like eBay, AliExpress, and Amazon also is growing more and more. So what we're trying to do and our goal at DRAS is to really harness and empower Sri Lankan sellers to sell to consumers. Buying from the likes of AliExpress or eBay, you're predominantly buying from international sellers. What's our mandate in Sri Lanka from the Alibaba Group is to grow the local ecosystem, to digitize and enable local sellers, local brands, local entrepreneurs to get online and start reaching. Initially, we're currently only focusing on Sri Lankan consumers, but as we go on, our plan is to open up these local Sri Lankan sellers to international consumers as well through our platform to potential buyers in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar. So in Sri Lanka, the e-commerce landscape is incredibly nascent still. Overall, e-commerce as a percentage of retail is still less than 1%. If you look at markets like India, which is at about 3 to 4%, you look at markets like China, which is at 26%. So Sri Lanka is still very, very early in its e-commerce journey. So the potential and the room to grow is still incredibly greenfield. There's so much opportunity still on the table that hasn't been captured. So that's very exciting for us for DRAS, because there's a lot of the pie that still the pie itself can be grown significantly. In the region, I think most of people would be aware of our regional competitors, mostly in India. I think India has now become a very, very well-entrenched e-commerce landscape with both big international players and local players competing, spending a lot of money trying to compete in that market. DRAS, we have decided to really stay out of India and really focus on countries that surround in the region in South Asia. And we've been fortunate that in every market we are in, we have the largest share in the e-commerce landscape. So that's a very unique position for us to be in, being sort of, we service around a potential customer base is around 500 million people when you combine Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar. So being the dominant player with no real competitors in the marketplace model in our 5 countries really position us to really grow and grow a very healthy and lucrative ecosystem, both for sellers and buyers itself. So it's a very exciting time for e-commerce in the region, and I think Sri Lanka is still probably at the very, very early stages of that development cycle. But it's a very exciting time to be in e-commerce, definitely. And the current COVID situation has definitely boosted e-commerce globally, and really brought in an entirely new segment of customers that would have not necessarily shopped online before. So that itself also is really being a good one of the silver linings in this current sort of very turbulent period the world is going through. Sorry, Lou, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, Rakhil. I think there were so many points that I'd like to touch on, but one thing that is critical to sort of see the e-commerce landscape in Sri Lanka going from that 1% to about 3%. What do you think are the significant drivers, the enablers, from an infrastructure standpoint, that you'd like to see as a player in the e-commerce industry? What are the main, if you could tell us a couple of drivers that would drive that percentage up?
So so there are a lot of things really that need to get aligned for the growth to continuously happen. A lot of people think that e-commerce is simply, you build a website, you put something online, and that's e-commerce. And at least in our experience, it's far more complex. There's so many moving parts, from obviously building out the platform to be easy to use and functionally accessible to anybody, whether which language you speak, what kind of social demographic you're part of. It should be a very sort of easy and approachable platform. On top of that, you need to build the entire logistics infrastructure to support that. And in our case, we also need to build the big seller infrastructure and the seller base as well, which is very complex. So for us to really see this pie become bigger, the few things that need to really get aligned is, firstly, we need more sellers. More brands, more businesses need to look at e-commerce as let's say an important channel in their sales ecosystem, and look at platforms like us to list their items and reach to customers digitally. Secondly, you need the logistic infrastructure to really grow and mature as well. In Sri Lanka, e-commerce logistics is very, very, very young and undeveloped. So much so that DRAS, we had to invest in our own logistics infrastructure and fleet, to the extent that in a very short period of time, we would most likely be the largest delivery company in the country. So that also has to mature. And what our focus is on, we don't want to constantly be investing in that. We want 3PLs or third-party logistics companies to also mature with us, to be able to facilitate that scale and facilitate that capacity. Next, another very important thing is payments. People need to be very comfortable paying online. As e-commerce grows, and if you want e-commerce to become a prevalent channel, less people need to use cash. More people need to be comfortable using their debit cards or credit cards, because when you deal with cash, it introduces a whole new complexities in managing the business. And thirdly, the people also need to, there needs to be a learning curve. Consumers need to understand how the e-commerce experience is different to offline experience, and then accept those differences, and then learn how to sort of buy online and offline and be comfortable and be, people still don't trust e-commerce, a lot of people, and that's why they don't buy online. So that learning curve also needs to be sort of climbed by many consumers for that, for the pie to grow bigger. But we're definitely seeing huge growth. I mean, DRAS, for example, we saw about 250 to 300% growth over the last year. And this year alone, I mean, we were expecting similar growth, but now we probably look at least 150% growth this year from last year as well. So still, even with the current lockdowns and the curfews and the import restrictions for sellers, we're still seeing significant demand.
Great. So, I mean, could you tell us a little bit about how large Alibaba is to a layman, as well as what's the scale and scope of DRAS? How big are you, and how big is Alibaba?
So Alibaba Group is very, very big. I believe the market cap is slightly under $1 trillion. So Alibaba as a company is bigger than the Sri Lankan economy, if you take it in that sense. But in terms of Alibaba as a global brand, it's still very much China-centric. 80% of Alibaba's business is still in China, yeah, and only 20% of our business is outside China. So it's still, very much a China-centric brand. Outside China, Alibaba runs predominantly 3 brands. We have AliExpress, that everyone knows, because you have Alibaba.com, which is a B2B platform. It's mainly, businesses buying in bulk from other factories from China and stuff like that. But in terms of consumer facing, you have AliExpress, which is mainly Chinese sellers selling to global consumers. And then Alibaba has 2 localized regional brands. So one is Lazada, the other one is DRAS. So Lazada and DRAS are essentially identical businesses, or sister companies, whereas Lazada focuses on Southeast Asia, and DRAS focuses on South Asia. So, but Lazada is still a significantly larger business than ours. So the Alibaba ecosystem is still very Asia focused. We don't have that much consumer-facing businesses outside Asia, but more and more they're looking at expanding into the US with Alibaba.com, and now you see more and more US and European consumers buying from AliExpress. But as a household brand, it's not that well known outside Asia. But like I said, it still is still I believe the third largest company in the world, being entirely essentially focused on China.
So you meant third largest e-commerce company in the world?
No, I think it's the third largest valued company in the world.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So in terms of e-commerce, is Alibaba number one, or what
Amazon is still larger. Amazon, I think, is the largest company in the world.
Right.
And I think Alibaba is number 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But in terms of e-commerce, Amazon is still bigger as a consumer-based business,
Right.
and Alibaba is number 2.
You mentioned something interesting. We have about 220 participants right now who are listening to us, and you said something at the start which was very positive, welcome. Given the times right now, you said you are looking at an inclusive strategy to look at how you can grow within our economy, so that you allow suppliers to come and list their products. How does that process work? I mean, I've not been exposed to that. So I've not been exposed to DRAS telling me you can come and list your products. It's always an ad saying buy something. But how does that ecosystem work?
Sorry, I didn't. You broke up there, Lewie. I didn't hear the last bit of the question.
So if there was someone to list their products in DRAS at the moment in Sri Lanka, so you're manufacturing something at home, you're a housewife, you have perhaps cakes or something like that you want to sell it on DRAS. How does that process work right now?
So it's quite simple. I mean, you can go to DRAS.lk and you can register as a seller. And in a very short period of time, once you sort of confirm some of the details like your bank details, etc., you can be online on the platform within 24 hours. It's a very quick turnaround. We have a seller incubation and support team that really helps sellers get online. So we can help you, help you upload your pictures and really guide you through that experience as well. We also have an interesting tool called DRAS University, which really, we look at it as really like an online MBA to teach people how to run an online business, from managing your inventory to really taking good pictures to managing your customer experience for your people who buy your products. And that's a great tool as well that a lot of our sellers use to really improve their seller performance and the experience, and at the end come through with a better experience for the customers.
All right. We saw in the news.
On my earlier point, I was mistaken. Yes. So Apple is the largest company in the world. Alibaba is number 6.
All right. All right. So in terms of we've seen you acquiring WOW from one of the biggest telco companies in Sri Lanka. What was your strategy behind that? Are you pursuing inorganic growth, or are you looking for acquisitions to grow your market share in this market? What's your strategy behind that?
So the WOW acquisition was less for users. I mean, when we acquired WOW, we were processing around 10,000 orders a day, and I think WOW was processing 200 or something. So it didn't really add too much to our business when it came to orders and things like that. We onboarded some great individuals who we felt was great for our team, and who understood and was part of the early stage of the e-commerce industry in Sri Lanka. So that was a great asset for us. The main reason we actually took part in working with Dialog was to really forge a partnership with Dialog. Historically, we couldn't do much with Dialog because they owned the WOW. They were running the similar e-commerce platform. But by taking on WOW into our business, we forged understanding and a partnership to work with Dialog closer. because we really feel that, working with Dialog, who is the largest telco in the country, would add a lot of value to us. And in turn, we also would help them focus on what they want to do, which is mainly now primarily on fintech and telco services, and allow us to focus on e-commerce. So that was a mutual collaboration that really worked for both of us.
All right. In terms of some of the trends, some of the social trends that millennials are embracing now, like the gig economy, crowdsourcing, working from home, perhaps even looking at other social trends in the e-commerce space. Could you tell us what are some of these trends that you see looking through your data that excites you to go to work in the morning, and particularly in the younger generation? Do you see some trends, social trends?
So some of the trends that we really want to go after is things like video streaming sales. So live selling. So let's say you want to sell something, you would run a live video feed and demonstrate the product at home, talk about it, and more people are buying from those kind of sellers. And in China now, it's becoming a huge channel. It's called video selling. So it's live broadcasting of. So have you seen these sort of as seen on TV tele shopping things on TV? So it's similar to that, but it's on platforms like Alibaba and influencers and even home business operators selling things live on the platform. I think a lot of consumers, especially on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, but even sort of TikTok and stuff like that, find these kind of channels far more authentic and entertaining. So that's a big trend now where e-commerce is merging more and more with entertainment. Yeah. You're seeing this with Amazon Prime and things like that. In China, you're seeing this with live streaming, video selling, things like that. So that's where we also see a big trend happening, where we want to sort of look at bringing more entertainment onto our platform. And with that, you will drive more engagement and hopefully more sales as well.
In terms of segments, do you see any particular segments, particularly in Sri Lanka, who are continuously buying? You probably have an e-commerce customer who buys regularly, perhaps 15, 20 times a month. I'm one of them. I try to do everything online. I can't remember the last time I visited a supermarket. How do you see segmentation, in the e-commerce space? Do you look at the segment of one where you personalize, customize, just like Amazon does? Or are you able to do that right now? Are you looking at broader segments? Would you like to tell us about that?
We definitely do narrow down a lot. I mean, we really sort of focus on really showing our customers what they would be interested in. So let's say if you open your DRAS app, it'll look very different to if I open my DRAS app. It'll be very much catered to what you've been searching for in the past, what you purchased in the past, what in things you're interested in via Facebook and things like that, and really segment and target you to really help you find and curate what you would be interested in. And that's sort of really what sets our platform apart as well. And it takes a lot of AI and a lot of processing to really customize an experience for every user. We have 200,000 people now who visit our site every day, unique visitors app. So to really create a unique experience for 200,000 people is difficult. So that requires a lot of assortment. Yeah, I mean, right now, the way how e-commerce works is the more assortment you have, the more money you'll make. That's essentially it. And we're always looking to grow our assortment. We want to be about 10 million SKUs in the next 2 years in Sri Lanka. And with that, you can segment more, you can target more, and have certain items sort of available for everyone, and really create a very customized experience for everyone as well.
So we've seen globally, in terms of an emerging trend, Rakhil, correct me if I'm wrong, some e-commerce companies also investing in brick and mortar operations, especially in the retail space, where you have a blend. So you get so big, you're big enough to buy a large retailer, and then you have a hybrid, is that something in the pipeline? Is that something you want to do? Because I see all the supermarkets, the others are now slowly following suit. But imagine if DRAS ran a supermarket, what would it be like?
So we're currently doing a sort of hybrid version of that already in Sri Lanka. So we have a concept called DRAS stores. So if you go into certain parts of Sri Lanka, I think we right now have about 450 to 500 DRAS stores. These are essentially stores that are branded by DRAS, and the shop owner creates online shopping experience for his offline customers. For example, you walk into a shop in more rural part of Sri Lanka, there's only a limited amount of items that store owner can have in his store physically. So what we tell these stores is, listen, you have hypothetically 1,000 SKUs or maybe 500 SKUs in your shop. We have 2 million SKUs. On top of what you sell here, you can also get your customers to buy on DRAS in your store, and we provide them a tab and things to facilitate that. And we give stores a commission for any orders that come through that store. So that's called our DRAS stores model. And that essentially the reason for that is it enables smaller shop owners to have a big assortment available to their customers who walk in and not limited to the stock they have in their shop. But also it's a trusted experience for people who in that area, correct? They may not trust buying online at home, but if they know that there's a physical point of contact for their online shopping experience, and it's the shop they know, the shopkeeper they know, they might also be more willing to try the experience. So we really want to scale this DRAS store model into being in 10,000 to 100,000 stores in Sri Lanka in a very short period of time. Alibaba Group also has gone into a similar model to like what Amazon has done, launching entirely automated supermarkets in China. So you walk into the supermarket, you pick up a product, you walk out, your Alibaba account is automatically charged. You don't even need to go through a checkout counter. So that's the kind of tech we have available to us. It's just our markets are still not mature enough for that. But these are things that we hope to introduce to Sri Lanka in years to come as the e-commerce market grows, as the digital adoption goes, as that kind of technology needs the consumer to be digital as well. They should be willing to be having their credit card stored on the platform and things like that. That's still, it's still early days for Sri Lanka.
Thanks, Rakhil. In terms of your other markets that you operate, so does a supplier who can list their products right now on DRAS, do we have access to the Pakistan, Nepal consumers as of now? Is that?
No, we don't. No, we don't. So right now, DRAS, we only operate localized models. So Pakistan buyers can only buy from Pakistan sellers, etc. We've set benchmarks as our ecosystem does grow. We're going to start allowing cross-border trade between our buyers and sellers. We would hopefully see that coming in the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months.
That's going to be fantastic. That's that's a huge opportunity for some of the entrepreneurs locally, vice versa in other markets as well. So COVID-19, the new normal, a new world, is it an opportunity for e-commerce or is it a threat for e-commerce? How do you see it?
I mean, we definitely see it as an opportunity. I mean, in some ways. I mean, in other ways, like for example, in Sri Lanka, if we do go into full curfews and things like that, then it's impossible for us to deliver anything, and it's impossible for our sellers to reach their stores to fulfill the orders they get through the platform. But short of that, if it's simply people looking to social distance more, not go to shops more, order online more, especially for their sort of day-to-day basic essentials, there's definitely an opportunity there for e-commerce platforms to really take advantage of.
All right. Now, my background is marketing, and I'm a marketer by profession, and we have a lot of marketers, about 230 of them right now listening to you. We learn digital marketing as a subject, but you're living it every day. You're looking at perhaps data on your phone and all the dashboards. I can imagine the kind of dashboards that you're looking at. How vital is digital marketing in e-commerce? And could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in terms of organic SEO to search engine marketing to conversion rate optimization within your website, A/B testing perhaps to get the best. I've seen your page, your DRAS page, and the Alibaba page and the app. They're fairly product focused. There's perhaps less emotion in it, but a lot product focused. So, what's your strategy behind that, and how does digital marketing play a vital role in your business?
So let's say a platform or website or app is designed is very, very intentionally. Every feature from a slider to where a product is, to where a button is, to how many buttons there are, all that is constantly A/B tested and evaluated whether it actually makes sense and whether customers will click on it. If they don't, we really within a day, we adapt it and change it. Everything is incredibly optimized for conversion. Digital marketing is an incredibly vital part of our business. Our online marketing and optimization team is about 40 people in Sri Lanka, and that's simply people looking at how the site, what should be on the site, so we split it into two. We have a team that brings traffic onto the platform, and we have a team that converts that traffic into customers. And the team that focus primarily on, let's say, digital marketing with its programmatics, SEO, online marketing, that team is the team that focuses on bringing people onto the platform. And then we have a team that converts people into customers that really focuses on CRM, on product optimization, product layout, campaign optimization, and that's all part of the digital marketing team that really. The goal is to essentially make sure that the site is entirely optimized to experience that you would look to make a conversion or buy something. So it's incredibly important, and we put a lot of focus on it, a lot of planning on it, and it's a science in itself that a lot of people really underestimate when getting into e-commerce. So it's this, for DRAS to grow and to see the kind of scale that we've reached, and we want to grow even further. This team is vital to make it happen.
I mean, I can imagine the digital marketing. I mean, you're talking about hunters and gatherers, people who bring in the traffic, and then people who optimize and look at the conversion rate. So, I mean, that's a brilliant strategy. But in terms of competence, I can see digital marketing as a key competence. But is there any other, if you are to name a few other critical competencies in the e-commerce business? I'm sure there are many students out there who want to perhaps have a part-time business in e-commerce, not necessarily a web page, but an Instagram page or a Facebook page, doing some boosting. What would be the key traits or competencies to excel in e-commerce?
So I think a lot of people don't realize this, but e-commerce is an incredibly data-driven business. And every decision we make at DRAS is based on data, and our actual goal is how do we get more data? We constantly, that's our goal. How do we get more data? And how do we analyze that and interpret that? And so when we look at bringing in people into the company, we don't, nobody who joined our marketing team had any marketing experience. Nobody who joined our, even our commercial team has any commercial experience. We look at people who really know how to understand and analyze data, and everything else we know we can train them. But if you're not data driven, if you're not inclined to enjoy looking at numbers and enjoy analyzing it and really finding trends, it's difficult to work, at least in our company, because it's such a data driven company. So that's the kind of competence we look at and we think is the most valuable when it comes to succeeding in e-commerce. And this is the same for our logistics side of the business as well. We look at optimizing hour on a delivery schedule. We looked at optimizing a rupee on actually not a rupee, 1 cent, 1 US cent in it comes to our cost of delivery. And that kind of optimization can only happen when you really dive in and, in a micro way, look at all the data, because once you get into volume, that 1 cent makes a big difference. And that's sort of the kind of detail we look at in the business.
So your logistics is in-house. You manage your logistics plus you outsource it as well. So you have
80% of our volume is through our in-house fleet, and 20% is through third-party logistics.
And do you also outsource your? Do you let others? Can they pay and use? Perhaps like grasshoppers, can they pay and use your logistic facilities?
No, because we're maxed out. So we're not. The reason we have to give the 20% is because every day we hire more people. Our orders also grows. It's just we're always sort of trailing behind the demand for the platform at the moment when it comes to
right. So in terms of your reach in Sri Lanka, Rakhil, I've seen DRAS very strong even in some suburbs.
We're island-wide delivery. 70% of our orders come from outside Colombo. So we're very much a company that's not concentrated in Colombo by any means. So with that, we deliver island-wide to every corner of the country. And on average, it takes 3 days from when you place an order to get it to anywhere in Sri Lanka. So in Colombo, it should take you a bit less, but if you're in Bariklo, it'll take you maybe 3-4 days. But on average, it's a 3 days target that we hold for deliveries in Sri Lanka, around Sri Lanka.
Do you operate through a hub and spoke, or do you have
So we have a centralized distribution hub in Colombo, and then we have about 30 smaller hubs around Sri Lanka.
Right, fantastic. I just want to touch base on the customer side, Rakhil. I just want to understand how do you manage the customer journey? I know that the customer is getting increasingly sort of demanding, especially post-COVID. Their expectations are rising. I'm in the business of education. I can see that happening even in our business. Consumers are expecting so much. There are the occasional mishaps. How do you manage the whole customer journey in terms of fulfillment, in terms of a customer experience?
Sure. So for us, that's always a challenge. I mean, when we deliver 15, right now we deliver between 15 and 20,000 orders a day. Even if 0.5% of our customers have a bad experience, that's 100 people, angry people every day, and they can be very vocal. So there is that. We're always going to have. We will never be able to operate 100%. Just because the entire ecosystem is not just us. We rely on sellers, we rely on 3PLs to really fulfill the entire chain of the purchase. So with that comes inefficiencies and mistakes and intentionally fraud as well in some cases. So we always have a segment of customers that do get disappointed and we let them down. As people shop online more, and more people get comfortable with it, what we hope is people forgive, correct? So the main reason you get angry when you shop online or when you do anything is if you think there's no recourse, correct? Like if you get a phone, buy it on DRAS, and it comes to you and it's broken or it's a fake, a seller sent you a fake phone maybe, or it's broken or it's the wrong model. If you know you will get a brand new replacement tomorrow, you're not going to be too upset, correct? But if you think that, okay, this is it, now how do I return it? I don't know how to return it. Will I get my money back? That's when customers get upset. So for us, it's education is the priority. Like get people to really trust the fact that if something goes wrong, don't worry, you won't be kept with a broken item. As long as you follow the rules and the sellers follow the rules, then people will the system won't let you down. I mean, there'll be delays and things like that. But so education is, I think, the biggest challenge for us. How do we educate sellers? How do we educate customers to understand that the system won't be perfect, but there is a process and a way to resolve everything. And that's our biggest challenge. And we're constantly trying to make this process more and more customer friendly. For example, I'll give you a very good example. As our orders increase every day and every month, so do our returns, correct? A healthy e-commerce ecosystem has as many returns as orders. And more, if more and more returns come, for us, it's physically impossible to go and collect these returns. Because as you know, at a certain time, we just don't have enough manpower. So now we've partnered with Sri Lanka Post, where when you want to return something, instead of waiting for the DRAS guy to come and collect it from you, and you don't know when that will be, you're waiting for the call. You can at your own convenience go drop it off at your closest post office, and you've returned the items. So you can do it at your time. Now, for many of our customers, they like that, correct? They don't need to be worried about staying at home and waiting for somebody to come collect it. They don't know when that's going to happen. With their own schedule, they can do it. But on the flip side, you have customers who don't want to do that, correct? They're like, okay, if you want to return it, you should come and collect it from us. So again, it's a balance. For us, we're trying to create experience that would satisfy the majority of our customers, but the reality is we're always going to have customers that's going to be unhappy with the experience. And that's, I think, the nature of the beast that we have to deal with.
Sure, sure. It's always the case in e-commerce. I mean, it's really difficult because you sort of the fulfillment from sometimes if you are selling others products, then there's a whole new challenge.
Yeah, majority of our product is majority of our sales is third-party products, correct? We're just connecting a seller and a buyer. So for us, it's very hard to control that. We put rules for the sellers and buyers to make to really make the whole experience efficient. But there's always going to be outliers that let the whole process down.
Sure. Just a few more questions. There are some questions coming in on the chat as well, some interesting ones. I just want to take one that says, Rakhil, could you tell us some of the e-commerce opportunities that someone could start small and scale up in Sri Lanka? Any industry that you think which has not yet been disrupted? We've seen the whole the whole Netflix disrupting the movie business. We've seen now in Sri Lanka, the whole channeling doctors on your phone and so on and so forth. What are some of the opportunities that you see that can be disrupted in terms of the e-commerce space in Sri Lanka and e-business space?
I wouldn't say disrupted. I think that the existing e-commerce space has still so much room to grow. I think like I said, e-commerce is still less than 1% of overall retail. So simply that there's room for 2 other DRASs to exist in Sri Lanka at our current size.
You're going to buy them over.
Sorry?
You're probably going to buy them over.
To be even close to the ratio of online retail in India. So, there's so much still room to grow. I think, however, I do think that, if getting into e-commerce, the bigger opportunity in Sri Lanka, I think, is to focus less on general marketplace models like ours, because it does require a lot of infrastructure, a lot of investment, and a lot of process-driven business to run a multi-category seller marketplace like ours. But where I think there's opportunities is to build single category platforms in the country, like a dedicated pharmacy, online pharmacy. It's still not prevalently used. Even dedicated groceries, you do have Keels, you have us, you have Cargills who are getting into groceries, but nobody's really taken a hold of that category and owned it. Obviously, we're trying to do that, but I mean that opportunity is still there. So I think if you focus on a singular category, I mean, online alcohol sales, I mean, more and more, you're seeing more and more of that coming as well. And still, most people don't do it. You still see lines outside, wine stores on a Friday night. So it's I think there's those kind of opportunities are still very much existent. Another big one is B2B. A lot of companies, a lot of
I think we lost
digitized as well.
Rakhil, I think we lost you there for a couple of seconds.
I was saying, so the B2B side of the market is still also very much ripe for disruption. It's still very much an offline ecosystem when buying things wholesale and things like that, and that could be digitized as well.
So a key enabler, Rakhil, I see is in terms of e-commerce reach. We've seen the whole mobile penetration increasing, smartphone penetration increasing, and I'm sure that's a key driver. So do you see a trend towards consumers using your mobile app more than their desktops and their laptops and their other devices? So are you then looking through mobile as a key strategy? Would you like to comment on that?
Mobile is very much our core strategy. So right now, around 75% of our orders come from our mobile app. And ideally, we want that to be more, because with the mobile app, you can target your customers better. You can send them push messages. You can, you can stay in contact and have a better experience with your customers when you're using a phone and the app versus a desktop experience. So that we definitely want to focus on that as to really grow even more. So even our customer acquisition strategy is still very much mobile focused and not desktop focused.
Is e-commerce profitable, Rakhil? I mean, this has been a big question in terms of the profits in e-commerce. I know you're backed by a large giant, but the market's quite small. Sri Lanka is very in its primitive stages at the moment. Is e-commerce profitable? Are you generating profits from your core business? Or are you looking at obviously listing and going public and perhaps looking at a revenue model beyond your core business?
So for us, our focus is mainly growth at the moment. So we've decided to really focus on really investing more into the country and growing our ecosystem and growing the business. We want DRAS to be a $500 million business in Sri Lanka in 5 years. So for that you really need to invest a lot. So e-commerce is profitable in incredibly, if you run an incredibly small business or incredibly large business. In between, it's very hard to make money. You need to really scale up and have a large amount of volume to really find profitability. Or if you run a very small business where you don't have to put too much investment into logistics, you don't have to put too much investment into sort of your infrastructure, then it's also profitable. But in a sort of in between mode, it's difficult to see.
That's a very interesting insight. I think that's something that we can really take back. So you either stay small or you acquire. But in terms of diversification, Rakhil, do you see it as a strategy, both related diversification and unrelated diversification? Could you tell us where have you diversified? You've gone into logistics. Have you gone into any other kinds of related complementary businesses? And are you looking at unrelated diversification, perhaps like your parent who's diversified a fair bit?
So our logistics business is a good example of something. As we scale and make it bigger, we would most likely diversify that or spin that off into a separate company in itself. So that's one area that we definitely would look at. Another area is where we're looking at getting into fintech in Sri Lanka. And we've actually greenlit an incubation product within DRAS to go live as a beta product early next year. So if that works out, then that would also sort of be spun off into a different separate brand. So we definitely see some opportunity to diversify outside our core business, but these are moonshot ideas. We still very much focus on growing our core platform, the core ecosystem, and like I said, there's still so much opportunity. To grow the core marketplace model, that most of our energy is still very much focused on building that.
I know you dodged the profitability question, but that's all right.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, we because we've entirely focused on growth right now, we choose not to be profitable in the sense that right now we set a target of revenue as a business, because once you reach that a certain scale,
Right.
then you're no longer fighting for your share as well. It just becomes a more entrenched company and sustainable as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've seen that in many industries where the hockey stick effect comes into play, and then you're looking at growth and scale, obviously, because
mean,
you have capability.
yeah, profit for us right now is possible, but that also means that we really turn the tap off,
Sure.
and that's not what our intention is at all.
Sure. In terms of technology, Rakhil, if not in Sri Lanka, maybe from the region or in China perhaps, do you see e-commerce using some of these contemporary technologies that we keep hearing about, and it's, we keep talking about it, but a lot of us don't use it in Sri Lanka, like AI, like IoT, perhaps cryptocurrencies, 3D printing, cloud, and various other, kind of emerging blockchain, for instance, that can be used perhaps in your industry. Do you see this, technologies really fueling the e-commerce strategy? Do you employ it in Sri Lanka at present, even in a small scale, or could you tell us about the region?
So AI is definitely used in a large way at Alibaba Group already. I mean, we constantly use AI and the algorithms behind it to drive decision making and to automate a lot of the processes that work on the platform. Blockchain, we definitely don't do too much about that right now. It could be an opportunity we look at with our fintech play a bit. Same with cryptocurrencies, not so much. But again, it's some of these technologies won't really apply to our business, but some are areas that we're not, let's say, we would shy away from. We just need to find the right user case to apply these technologies.
So big data is something that's key, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, big data as a company, I think we already run a huge data infrastructure business called Ali Cloud, similar to AWS, that both runs cloud servicing business, but also on the backbone of that huge data processing business that allows us to really analyze and make decisions. That a lot of our AI is also built off the backbone of that.
What is your key focus product categories broadly, Rakhil, in terms of your platform? Is there any particular types of products that you're really focusing on, which consumers are really buying, and are there other categories that are growing really fast?
So the four main categories that were historically the most important was our electronics, lifestyle, uh, fashion, and FMCG. But very recently, we really invested more in our digital category. So when I say digital, it's a category that it doesn't involve a physical product. So utility payments, for example, is something we really invested heavily in now. And right now, we launched utility payments, I think about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and we were processing around 100 million rupees worth of utility payments a month in a very short period of time. So we want to grow those kind of categories even more. And with that, we want to introduce other categories as well, like gaming, esports, things like that both enable customers to be entertained and then make purchases around that entertainment.
So you're slowly eating into the business of the banks and the business of the supermarkets, perhaps with these value-added services, and that's an interesting strategy. In terms of your long-term goals, Rakhil, for DRAS in Sri Lanka, as the CEO of the company, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, where do you want to arrive at?
So our plan is to be a business that does about $100 million in sales in the next 18 months. That's our projection, and about $500 million in sales in the next 4 years, ideally, in Sri Lanka. That's our plan. With that, we would probably have enough critical mass to also then by that time, also have introduced other services like financial services, and other category, other ancillary businesses to really grow our ecosystem. So we want to be an ecosystem play, a platform that really entertains people, but also has a lot of utility for people, whether it's their financial needs or their shopping needs, or their logistics needs. So as this can only happen if more people use the platform, because then you create that ecosystem, you create that environment that then you can tap into and provide other services. So we have a big ambitions for the platform and for Sri Lanka. And so far the trajectory is looking very, very positive.
So could Sri Lankans use Alipay at the moment? Is
No,
that
Alipay globally is still only mainly available to Chinese people. So Alipay as an ecosystem predominantly exists for Chinese people who travel to pay in other countries. So I think now they're looking to slowly introduce allowing non-Chinese to open Alipay accounts, but I think it's still very early stages.
What's your view on WeChat?
Great platform. Again, very much only making payments on WeChat. I think it's only still allowed predominantly for Chinese people. But that's the kind of ecosystem we would love to create. Where both interaction happens, trade happens, payments happen, all on one single platform.
Right. In terms of data protection, Rakhil, I mean, it's a key issue. I don't know whether it's given enough due priority in markets like ours. Cybersecurity, we don't have very strong data protection laws. You have the whole GDPR in the West. What are the challenges in e-commerce, especially the scale that you're operating in terms of cybersecurity as well as data protection?
So I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but it's something that we take very seriously and we invest a lot of money into. I mean, customer data, seller data on DRAS is incredibly closely held asset of ours, where we really protect it both from outsiders, but from our employees as well. Like, for example, in DRAS, if you put a thumb drive into your computer, we all our IT knows that. So that's the kind of security we take when it comes to protecting our customers' data and our customers' data as well. So we take it very seriously. Within the Alibaba group, we don't share our data to anyone. So it's a very highly guarded information, because it's the customers put their trust in us to hold this information, so that in turn we take it as a very big responsibility as a business.
All right, just one final question, which is a personal question on leadership perhaps, and it'll help all the entrepreneurs who are listening out there who are inspired by what you're doing, Rakhil at DRAS. What are some of the personal traits that you'd like to see in entrepreneurship? Some of the personal traits that someone would need to sort of uphold in being an entrepreneur in the e-commerce space in Sri Lanka? Would you have any?
So for me, now DRAS has grown into a relatively large company. We have, I think this month we crossed 1,000 employees in Sri Lanka. So it's a big company to manage, and with that, for me, the biggest thing I try to pass on to people who work for me, whether it's the managers who work directly under me or to the people who work under them, is to really push empowerment. You really need to trust the people you hire to do the job. You don't micromanage. You don't, really. You have to trust them. If you hire them, you have to trust them to get it done. If you don't, you have a lot of inefficiencies in the business. You have a lot of time wasted. You have a lot of redundancy that happens. And with that, your business doesn't operate as fast as possible. That's one. The second thing is, I very much encourage people to act. There's only so much deliberation that can happen. There's only so much strategy and decision-making process that could happen, but eventually you have to act. And in a business like ours, acting promptly is very important. When it both comes to our business in itself, where time is very important when it comes to getting product to customers, but as a business in itself, where we want to evolve and grow very quickly. But with that comes the freedom to fail, correct? You act fast, then you have to also accept that people will fail. And you have to be comfortable with that as well. In Sri Lanka, I think traditionally people don't like to fail, predominantly for social reasons. Or if they do, they don't like admitting it. And I think if you embrace that, you will learn as a person much faster. And you would take certain risks that essentially you have more reward, more risk, more reward. Now, obviously, you to manage this process and have checks and balances to make sure that the right risk is taken. But if you create a culture that allows failure, that allows independent decision making, that allows for empowerment, I think you'll have an organization that grows very quickly with people who actually feel empowered and who actually feel vested in the business.
You sound a lot like Jack Ma. Have you met Jack Ma?
I have met Jack Ma. I met him last year, but I have not heard much of his speeches. So I'll take that as a compliment.
Thank you very much, Rakhil. It's been a pleasure, and we're very proud of you, of what you're doing. And it's a daunting task. We know e-commerce is very difficult. So, any final thoughts you'd like to share with the budding entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think in Sri Lanka, it's for any entrepreneur, I think it's really be aggressive in what you're trying to do, and don't just think Sri Lanka as your market. Especially technology entrepreneurs. The world is out there for you to tap in, and the internet is a great multiplier. It allows you to be everywhere. So with that, when creating your businesses as well, think global. I mean, think of a product that would work in Sri Lanka but can scale globally, and I think that kind of ambition is very important for Sri Lanka as an ecosystem to really grow as well.
Thank you, Rakhil. Thank you so much for spending your Friday evening with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys.